An ancient apocalypse, older than the book of Daniel, was quoted as prophecy in the New Testament. Then almost every trace vanished from Europe for over 1,000 years. No decree was ever recorded, but wherever Roman power reached, the book of Enoch was gone. Only Ethiopia kept it as scripture. Today, AI analysis is uncovering patterns and erasures the church left behind. What did they need to hide so badly, and why did they want us to forget who first called the Messiah the Son of Man? The Book of Enoch stands apart as one of the most complex and ancient apocalyptic texts ever written. Its origins stretch back to a period when the Hebrew Bible was still taking shape, with core sections composed between 300 to 100 BCE. What survives today is a 5-part collection: the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch. Each section carries its own themes and style, woven together over centuries. At the heart of the narrative is Enoch himself, the great-grandfather of Noah. The book of Genesis describes him as a man who walked with God and was no more, hinting at a figure who transcended death. In Enoch's own book, he becomes a visionary, led by angels through the heavens, shown secrets of the cosmos, and entrusted with warnings for future generations. The text's earliest layers, including the Watchers and the Astronomical Book, appear to be as old as or older than the Book of Daniel, placing Enoch among the very first Jewish apocalypses. The Book of Parables introduces a striking figure, the Son of Man, a messianic judge who sits beside the Ancient of Days and presides over the fate of souls. This is the earliest surviving use of the title Son of Man as a personal messianic figure, a concept that would later echo through the Gospels. In these chapters, the Son of Man is not just a symbol, but a cosmic authority, invested with power to judge even the angels. Enoch's visions move from the rebellion of angels and the corruption of the earth to intricate calendars and cosmic order, to coded histories of Israel, and finally to ethical exhortations and apocalyptic warnings. The composite nature of the book, built up over generations, reflects a living tradition, constantly reinterpreted and expanded. For centuries, this text shaped the imagination of scribes, priests, and early Christian thinkers, offering a vision of the world that was both ancient and radically new. Across the ancient world, the fate of the Book of Enoch traces a line as sharp as any imperial border. In the highlands of Ethiopia, priests continued to copy and chant its words through centuries of upheaval. For them, Enoch was scripture, read in churches and woven into daily liturgy. Monasteries safeguarded their manuscripts, sometimes hiding them in stone churches or caves when war threatened, ensuring the book's survival in Ge'ez while much of the world forgot it existed. Generations of Ethiopian scribes became the book's living custodians, passing it from hand to hand, never breaking the chain. But in the heart of the Roman Empire, Enoch's presence faded with barely a trace. Greek and Latin translations, once available in early Christian communities, stopped being copied. No full manuscript survives from medieval Europe, not a single codex in the libraries of Rome, Constantinople, or the great monastic centers of the West. In catalogue after catalogue, Enoch's name is missing. Church councils drew up lists of books to be read aloud in worship, and Enoch was simply not included. The silence is almost total, yet on the empire's edges a different pattern emerges. In the caves of Qumran, near the Dead Sea, Jewish scribes copied Enoch more than almost any non-biblical text, treating it as essential reading. In Ethiopia, the book remained alive, integrated into the canon and the rhythm of religious life. But everywhere Rome's authority reached, across North Africa, Europe, and Byzantium, Enoch vanished. The pattern is too precise to ignore. Where imperial control set the boundaries of scripture, the book disappeared. Where that control faltered, Enoch endured. The result is a map of loss that looks less like an accident and more like the outcome of quiet, systematic exclusion. The question that lingers is not just why the book vanished, but why its disappearance followed the lines of empire so closely. A shepherd's stone striking pottery in a Judean cave set off a chain of discoveries that rewrote the history of ancient texts. In 1952, archaeologists entered Cave 4 at Qumran and found a tangled mass of parchment fragments, thousands of pieces, the remains of hundreds of manuscripts. Among them, researchers identified 11 separate copies of the Book of Enoch, each written in Aramaic. These fragments were not random scraps. They represented every major section of Enoch, copied and recopied by a community that treated the book with the same reverence as Isaiah or Deuteronomy. Radiocarbon dating placed these Enoch manuscripts from 300 BCE to 200 BCE, centuries before the rise of Christianity. The ink, the script, the pale brown parchment all pointed to a living tradition, not a medieval invention. For decades, skeptics had dismissed the Ethiopian Enoch as a late forgery, but the Qumran finds settled the debate. The words preserved in the Ethiopian highlands matched the ancient Aramaic lines from the Dead Sea caves almost word for word, bridging a gap of 2,000 years. The sheer number of Enoch fragments at Qumran, more than for most biblical books, forced scholars to reconsider the book's status. Here was hard evidence. Enoch was not an outsider's myth or a fringe curiosity. It was a cornerstone of apocalyptic thought in the Second Temple period, copied alongside the foundational texts of Judaism. The discovery at Cave 4 transformed Enoch from a rumor into a fact, an ancient voice recovered from the dust, with a place in the story of Scripture. Arguments for excluding the Book of Enoch have shifted and fractured over the centuries, but none withstand close scrutiny. One claim points to its age, saying it was too ancient and too distant from the apostolic era. Yet Genesis and Job, both older or equally ancient, were never questioned on those grounds. The accusation of pseudepigraphy, that it was written under a legendary name, was also wielded, but the early church accepted books like Daniel and even the Gospels, despite their own anonymous or disputed authorship. Enoch was singled out, while other pseudonymous texts were embraced. Heresy became the next charge. Critics argued that Enoch's stories of angels, forbidden knowledge, and cosmic judgment crossed the line into dangerous speculation. But early church fathers like Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria quoted Enoch with approval, not alarm. The label of heresy only stuck after the book had already vanished from official lists. Contradiction with Scripture was another common rationale. Yet the letter of Jude quotes Enoch directly, treating its prophecy as valid. No council canon or papal decree ever cites doctrinal error as the reason for exclusion. Instead, Enoch was quietly set aside while other, equally complex or controversial texts remained. Each official excuse turns out to be selective, used to justify Enoch's disappearance, but ignored for other books with similar issues. The pattern is clear. The usual rules were bent, stretched, or simply ignored when it came to Enoch. What remains is the uncomfortable possibility that the real reason for its removal lies not in its origin or reliability, but in the content itself. The question is no longer why Enoch was excluded, but what was so threatening inside its pages. On a barren mountain called Hermon, 200 angels made a pact. Their leader, Semyaza, swore an oath. One by one, each watcher bound himself to a rebellion that would change the fate of the world. These were not nameless spirits. The Book of Enoch gives them identities, motives, and roles. Azazel, the most infamous, introduced the art of forging swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, tools that turned neighbor against neighbor. He also revealed the secrets of jewelry, cosmetics, and colored dyes, teaching humans how to adorn themselves and hide their true faces. Semyaza brought enchantments and root cutting, unlocking the knowledge of spells, medicine, and plant lore. Other watchers taught astrology, signs of the stars, the course of the moon, and the reading of omens in the clouds and earth. Each forbidden lesson carried a price. The children born from these unions were Nephilim, giants both in stature and appetite. They consumed everything: crops, livestock, even human lives. When the earth could no longer sustain their hunger, violence erupted. The Book of Enoch describes a world spiraling into chaos, where blood soaked the ground and the cries of the oppressed reached heaven. The Watchers had not only broken a cosmic boundary, they had unleashed a catastrophe that blurred the line between human and divine. When judgment fell, the Nephilim were destroyed, but their spirits remained. According to Enoch, these restless spirits became demons, forever bound to the earth, tormenting humanity until the final reckoning. The story does not frame progress as a blessing. Instead, it casts every leap in technology, every new science, as a shadowy inheritance from rebel angels. The arts of war, seduction, and divination are not celebrated. They are wounds, marks of a knowledge that was never meant for mortals. In this vision, civilization itself is born from corruption, and every advance carries the memory of a cosmic crime. In the astronomical book, Enoch is led by the angel Uriel into a world mapped and measured with a precision that defies its time. Uriel unveils a calendar, not of lunar months, but of a solar year, a 364-day year split into 4 perfect quarters of 91 days each. This system stands apart from the familiar Jewish calendar, which follows the shifting moon and drifts across the seasons. Enoch's calendar is rigid, mathematical, and claims to mirror the order of heaven itself. The text describes the sun's journey through the sky, entering and exiting through east and west gates at exact intervals. It records the lengthening and shortening of days, the solstices and equinoxes, the waxing and waning of the moon, and the subtle differences that mark the passage of each season. The instructions are not vague or poetic. They are technical, filled with numbers and cycles, as if written for a priestly class charged with keeping time in step with the cosmos. This knowledge, Enoch says, comes directly from Uriel, the angel of the stars. Uriel's teachings go beyond ritual. They offer a blueprint for a calendar that claims to restore the original order of creation, lost since the Watchers' rebellion. The Qumran community, whose scrolls survived in desert caves, adopted this 364-day calendar as their own. For them, the mainstream Jewish calendar was corrupt, out of sync with the rhythm set by God and revealed to Enoch. Every festival, every Sabbath, every sacred date was recalculated according to this hidden system. The implications are hard to ignore. A solar calendar of this complexity requires careful observation over generations. It challenges the authority of established priests and temple rituals. Enoch's calendar is not just a technical curiosity, it is a rival system, a claim that true sacred time was preserved only by those who kept Enoch's secrets. In a world where control of the calendar meant control of worship, the astronomical book posed an intellectual threat as potent as any forbidden myth. In the 4th century, the relationship between church and empire transformed the boundaries of belief. As Christianity moved from the margins to the center of Roman power, bishops and imperial officials worked together to define which texts could shape doctrine and public worship. Councils assembled in cities like Laodicea, Hippo, and Carthage produced official lists of books approved for reading in churches. These lists, preserved in canons and festal letters, set the limits of acceptable scripture. The Book of Enoch was not named among them. No surviving decree condemned Enoch by name. Instead, the process was quieter and more effective: omission. In the Roman heartlands, once a book failed to appear on the approved lists, it stopped being copied by scribes. Over decades, texts outside the canon faded from libraries and memory. The difference was practical, not always polemical. If a work was not on the list, it was not read aloud, not taught, not recopied. This pattern was enforced across the provinces. Councils instructed clergy to read only from the recognized books. In some regions, local rulings repeated the same boundaries, reinforcing which texts belonged in the life of the church and which did not. The result was a narrowing of tradition, not through fire or public condemnation, but through the steady pressure of policy and habit. As the imperial church alliance deepened, the fate of Enoch was sealed, not by a single act, but by a system that defined what counted as revelation and quietly let the rest disappear. Data scientists working with ancient texts are applying algorithms that scan for patterns invisible to the human eye. When researchers fed the Book of Enoch, Genesis, Daniel, and Revelation into these systems, the results were hard to ignore. The algorithms mapped out hundreds of points where Enoch's language and imagery surface in the Bible, then abruptly contract into single verses or vanish altogether. Genesis chapter 6 verses 1 to 4, for example, compresses the Watchers and Nephilim saga, dozens of chapters in Enoch, into just 4 cryptic lines. The software highlights this as a signature of redaction, a detailed tradition reduced to a fragment, stripped of context. The same tools flagged over 100 parallels between Enoch and Revelation, shared phrases, matching visions, even identical sequences of judgment and cosmic upheaval. These connections had been noticed by scholars for years, but the algorithms brought out their scale. Machine learning models even picked up on timelines and language in Daniel that align with Enoch's apocalyptic framework, suggesting adaptation rather than coincidence. What emerges is a pattern. The further Enoch's themes stray from official doctrine, the more they shrink or disappear in the canon. The editing scars are not just in what is missing, but in the shape of what survives, compressed, fragmented, and often unexplained. As these digital tools lay out the data, the question grows sharper. Who decided what was allowed to remain and what had to be erased? Today, Enoch's words circulate online, challenging centuries of silence. As digital tools uncover forgotten texts, the line between lost and hidden knowledge grows thin. The unanswered questions Enoch raises about power, truth, and who decides what endures echo louder in an era shaped by algorithms. When history's omissions resurface, the real test isn't what was concealed, but whether we're willing to confront what it means right now.